Are the Baltimore Ravens destined to trade down in the 2023 NFL draft? We talk about that, why they could decide to make that move. Also dive into our final mock draft Monday of the 2023 draft season and dive into mock drafts from Twitter. All that and much more coming up next here on this Monday edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here as always on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here with us today, making us your first listen each and every day. Whether it's your first time listening, you're an everyday, or you're here every single day, I appreciate you for tuning in here on the show. Be sure to subscribe for free, both audio form and video form. We're a 5-day-a-week Daily Ravens podcast, Monday through Friday. So any Ravens news, analysis, updates, we have it here, right here on Locked On Ravens. So if you have a friend or a family member who's a big Ravens fan, wants Ravens content, or even as a rival fan, maybe a Steelers fan, a Bengals fan, who wants the enemy perspective, be sure to throw them over here our way on Locked On Ravens. And this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off of your first month. And we're back. It's our final mock draft Monday of 2023. Time has flown by here. It's gone, well, actually, I think it's gone by really slowly and also really, really fast. I think the Lamar situation has, I don't know, put this off season in like a warp. Like it feels like it's been such a crazy off season. It's been a roller coaster, but we're here, the draft less than a week away. And today we're going to be talking about why the Ravens actually could be destined. I like that word, the destined, why they could be destined to trade down in the 2023 draft. It just seems like a lot could be setting up that way. So we'll talk about that here in this first segment, why they would do that, what the packages could be, etc. Then in the second segment, again, the final mock draft Monday of 2023 means we have one more mock draft Sunday that I did that we're going to talk about here today. I think it went pretty well. We're going to talk about that, who I picked for the Ravens in a 7-round Ravens mock draft. And finally, in our last segment, we'll be diving into mock drafts from Twitter and talking about what the consensus right now is of the Ravens fan base and get into those. So again, a ton of content on the show. Let's dive into our first topic of conversation, the trade down. Something I've talked about for a long time. I think, with the Ravens having the 22nd overall pick, they have 5 total picks this year. They could easily stick and pick there. There are going to be, I think, a lot of good corner prospects that potentially fall to them. Same with wide receiver, depending on which need you would rather them go after at 22. But I think there's enough, at least where this isn't necessarily a super top-heavy draft where there are those all-around like consensus guys. There are the ones like, Will Anderson's in the top conversation and the Jalen Carters, depending on how teams view his, off-field stuff, and then the Tyree Wilsons of the world. But there are a lot of prospects where we don't really know whether they're going to be high teens picks, or they're going to be end of first round, early second round selections in that area. And, Baltimore picking at 22, it definitely feels like there could be a really good opportunity for them, especially, one of the reasons why I feel like they could be destined to do this, to trade down, is because of the pick factor. They only have 5 this year. And as I've talked about on the show multiple times, they had 6 fourth-round picks in 2022, 5 total picks this year. I think, that draft, they had 11 total picks last year. And then 2 years ago, they had 10, I believe the number was. So 21 picks in 2 years, if my math is right, which sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, but I'm pretty sure I'm right there. If I'm not, I will find out. But regardless, upwards of 20 picks in the past 2 drafts, and the Ravens have a quarter of that, at least a quarter of that in this year's draft. So Eric DeCosta, the Ravens have been very adamant. They've made it very well known that they love their picks. They do. And in this situation, trading down from 22 is going to give you the most. All right, Lamar Jackson will give you the most, right? If you trade Lamar on draft night, that's going to give you multiple firsts, multiple seconds, hopefully. But in terms of if Lamar stays, and at this point, I feel like the 1 year like franchise tag situation is where it kind of falls for me. That's my prediction. But if it's not Lamar, the 22nd pick is your best asset outside of that. So like an 86 trade down is not going to net you much. Like you can maybe get a fourth, like an extra fourth out of that deal. I don't think that's moving a needle for you. So for Baltimore, I think the appeal here is talking about how this is where you don't really know where prospects are going. Is a guy going to go in the top 15 or is he going to go in the top 30? There are a lot of those prospects where the ranges of these prospects are very, very large. They are very wide. They're a very wide range this year. So for the Ravens, I feel like they're going to get to the clock at 22 if they stay there and don't trade up, which I do not think they will. But if they get there at 22, I feel like they're going to have like 6 or 7 guys. Like, let's say I'll just throw out 6 prospects who could realistically be there. Let's say it's Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Deonte Banks. Who else could be there? Bijan Robinson out there just because, even though I know it's not a very popular pick, but we'll throw him out there anyway. Bijan Robinson. Let's say Cam Smith is in that conversation. And maybe like an edge guy, maybe Nolan Smith is another one. So 6 or 7 guys who the Ravens like, and they'd say, yeah, you know what, we'd take that guy at 22. If there are, even if you want to up that number, if there are 8 or 10 guys they'd take at 22, I think trading back is smart for them because obviously some of those guys are going to go. Like let's say they traded 27, 28, 29. Some of those guys are going to go, but I think for Baltimore, you could get, like, again, I think for me, and I've said this a couple of times, the meat of this draft is, I think, mid first round to mid or early, depending on how much you like the draft class or not, but early to mid third round. So to me, picking up an extra second round pick while only moving back 5, 6, 7, 8 spots, I know that's pretty unrealistic. I don't think a lot of teams would do that. Maybe you'd have to do, 2 seconds, a very early second round pick, like one of the first picks on day 2, and then you net another second. So 2 seconds. A first and a second to me would be the dream trading back from 22, but I don't know. Would it be 30 and 62 from Philadelphia? You could. Maybe Philly really wants a guy and they just pick someone at 10. They want to move up for somebody else. They could do that. But trading down to me, I think gives the Ravens a very good chance to get someone they would have taken in 22 anyway, and then also pick up a second round prospect that they're not going to have a shot at getting if they don't trade into that round, because like we have seen from them, their second round draft history has not been perfect. In fact, it has not been very good. But I think for what you have, the Ravens missed out on guys in that 2019 draft after trading for Lamar. They moved up, obviously, from the second into the first. They gave up their 2019 second in that deal. And, they lost out on guys like Eric McCoy, who's a very good center for the Saints now, et cetera, et cetera. And, it's almost like the Seahawks in the first round, where the Seahawks are they have not had a good track record drafting in the first round for the past decade or so. The Ravens, you can talk about all, J.K. Dobbins, really good second round pick. There are a couple other really good hits there, but then you have the Arthur Browns of the world, the Terrence Codys of the world, the Sergio Kindles, and, there are more than a couple others in that category. But I do think that having a second round pick is very valuable. And then if you want to, you could trade down from that second round pick. Maybe they get an early to mid second. You could trade down from that pick, acquire more assets. Does Baltimore have room for 10 rookies? No, I wouldn't expect them to. But I think a healthy class for them would be anywhere in the 6 to 8 range. Maybe 7 is like the perfect amount of rookies for them this year, at least draft wise. They're always going to be the undrafted free agents. But I think that allows you to double dip at least one of your needs in corner or wide receiver while still giving you other areas. If those sneaky needs, maybe you want to draft a mid-round defensive lineman, a mid-round edge, a mid-round running back, whatever that may be. So to me, if you're between 6 or 7 guys at 22, I don't think trading down is the worst thing. In fact, I think that would be probably if there's no brainer pick. So Joey Porter Jr., I would take in a heartbeat at 22 if he's there. Absolutely. There have been rumblings Zay Flowers could be the first wide receiver off the board. I know a lot of people are very much in love with Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State. If he's at 22, I probably take him as well. But if there is no huge slide on a player that falls to 22, and we're not saying, oh, this guy should have gone in the top 10. Why is he here at 22? I think that maybe the most optimal situation for them, unless they are in love with a prospect, like, maybe they love Deonte Banks and they want to take him to put opposite of Marlon Humphrey. Maybe they love one of the early round tight ends. I hope that's not the pick, but maybe they love Bijan Robinson. I don't know. But if that's not the option and they say, you know what, we'd be comfortable taking Zay Flowers at 28. We'd be comfortable taking Jordan Addison at 28 or Deontay Banks or Cam Smith or some of these other positional guys. I think trading down, getting that second or getting a very early third or 2 seconds and a fifth, whatever it may be, I think the Ravens could do that. And with, again, their love of picks, their love of those rookie contracts, those team-friendly, cost-controlled deals, it would not shock me to see them trade down at 22. Would sticking and picking there be bad? No, absolutely not. If they like a guy and it's a good pick and if he fits the system and that's their guy and they don't want to risk the trade. I mean, Kaji Ismail talked about this with us on Friday, which is a great episode, by the way, a little shameless plug, but he loves Jalen Hyatt. Q loves Jalen Hyatt. And to me, he's a guy that I'd probably trade down for. I'm late first, early second guy to me, Jalen Hyatt is. But Q said, no, go. He'd be fine taking him at 22 because you don't want to risk if he is your guy and you're set on him and this is the guy you want and he falls to you. You don't want to risk having that guy get taken as you trade down 5 spots and he gets taken 2 picks before you when you could have had him in the original slot. So there is a risk factor to trading down if there's a guy you really like, but you're going to take the risk. But I just think this class is very unique in the fact that there are a lot of guys I'd be comfortable. I'm sure the draft board will fall that way where there are going to be surprises, but I'm sure there are going to be a lot of guys that I would say, yeah, I'd feel comfortable if Baltimore took them at 22. So moving down a couple spots, picking up extra draft capital, I'm sure that some of those guys would still be available if they trade into, a later first round spot or an early second round spot, like 33, 34, 35, whatever that may be. So a very interesting conversation, an interesting talking point for Baltimore, what they could do. And coming up in our second part of the show, we'll be diving into a mock draft Monday, our final 7-round Ravens mock draft here on the show for 2023. So be sure to stay tuned. It's a lot to get to here on Locked On Ravens. But first, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process. There have been a lot of times where I've learned something about myself, and the experience was really good for me because I think it impacted my life and just who I was as a person. But we're always growing and changing in a ton of different ways. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding because sometimes we don't really know what we want or why we react the way we do until we talk through things. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. And there's so many benefits to therapy, and you can learn positive coping skills. You can learn how to set boundaries. It also can empower you to become the best version of yourself. And it isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We're back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens Monday edition, mock draft Monday edition. Kevin Ostreicher, your host, still here with you, and we're back. It is a mock draft Monday, and it's a sad one for me a little bit for a couple of reasons. One, because it's been a lot of fun doing these. We do a mock draft every single week. We go through different scenarios, and it's really fun. It's also a sad day today because the Nuggets lost last night. I'm a big Denver Nuggets guy. I'm disappointed. I'm disgusted on it. I wanted the sweep, but you don't go undefeated in the playoffs. Mostly it's it's different in the NFL where it's one game, single elimination. So Nuggets back at it tomorrow in Denver, but yeah, I'm feeling it a little bit in this one. But we're talking Ravens football. That's what this show is about. So let's get to our 7-rounder, our Ravens mock draft, our final one. I put this out on Twitter here, and I was pleased with how it went. I think it was very needs-based. It was a sandwich of sorts, and you'll know what I'm talking about here at the end. So first up for me, pick number 22. Well, actually, I used 4 different mock draft simulators throughout this whole process, throughout all the mock drafts we did. The Draft Network's mock draft machine wasn't ready. That's the one I used for today's show. And their board is very interesting. It didn't save one of my mock drafts. I had to do another one, and I had to try to get the guys I got before. But I used PFNs, I used the mock draft database, and I used Pro Football Focus before they obviously put their things behind a paywall. But first here, pick number 22 for the Ravens. They have it at 23 because of the forfeit from Miami. Cam Smith, the South Carolina corner, was my selection. I like Cam Smith a lot. he's someone who he developed. He had a lot of growth during his time in college, was a very impact player for them by the end of his college career. And look, he's someone who matched up with a lot of the top guys in college and didn't really give up a ton. I mean, he's super competitive. He's a very physical corner as well, but also has that like the twitchy ability to him. He's speedy. His hips he has very good hip movement, like the loose hips aspect, and also the feet, good footwork, good foot movement from him. And also in man coverage, you don't really get away from him in man coverage as a wide receiver. So to me, I think, you already have a physical corner in Marlon Humphrey. Having that physicality with Cam Smith too, I think would be really, really good. Now, tackling for him consistency-wise can be a bit iffy. I know that's not what Ravens fans want to hear with all the tackling woes the Ravens defense has had over the last couple of seasons. Sometimes he does have a bit of a knack to be over aggressive in coverage. And I think Marlon Humphrey, you kind of go through that a little bit too, where Marlon Humphrey can get a little grabby, a little too physical, get some holding penalties on him. I think that's kind of how you live and you die with these kind of corners, but they can be really, really good, such as Marlon Humphrey, top 5 corner in this game right now. So I think adding Cam Smith, I think he's underrated in this class. Like I think a lot of people look at like the Devon Witherspoons and the Christian Gonzalez, Joey Porter Jr.'s, etc., even like Deontay Banks. But I really like Cam Smith. I wouldn't be surprised if Cam Smith went off the board at like 16 to Washington. I feel like Washington, it feels like, is a team that's linked to him. I would not be mad at Cam Smith whatsoever. Then it picked number 86 here. I ended up taking Tyreek Stevenson, the corner from Miami. Now, Stevenson to me, I don't think there's any way he falls to 86, or Draft Network has it at 87 because of the forfeit. But yeah, he's someone who is a second round guy to me. He's one of the guys I would target, going back to the trade down. If the Ravens traded down to the mid-second round, that's someone I would target with that pick, Tyreek Stevenson. I don't think he's going to be there at 86. I'd be ecstatic if he was. Another physical outside guy. He's a 6-foot guy, 214 pounds. Again, I think the Ravens, they want to be a physical defense. They want players who are physical, especially in their secondary. We have seen that. And for Tyreek Stevenson, he has the length. I think that, also for him, he's a competitor. He absolutely loves the game of football. You can tell it. He's super aggressive as well. Very physical in his tackling style too. I think that's the kind of player Baltimore should look for. You have a bunch of these Marlon Humphrey type players on your defense. I say continue with that physicality. Kyle Hamilton's really physical. We saw that multiple times. Marcus Williams is a ball hawk, but he can also be physical. I think you just want to build a super physical secondary that can just kind of beat guys up at the line. I think if you add Cam Smith and Tyreek Stevenson to Marlon Humphrey, it's incredible. And I think it gives you that 3-corner rotation that I think Baltimore really likes, as I've talked about multiple times. The everydayers know Jimmy Smith, Marlon Humphrey, Brendan Carr, Jimmy Smith, Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters. Those are the trios they like there. Now, I think that a lot of people have worries about his scheme fit. I think that people feel like he's very one-dimensional in some ways. But to me, I think, some of the tightness in his hips can be a little concerning that you see on tape. And again, some tackling is not there, but that stuff I think can be coached. At least I hope it would be. So to me, I think having the duo of Cam Smith and Tyreek Stevenson would be pretty good in my opinion there. Next, I ended up going edge. My next pick was at 125, and I took Andre Carter II, the edge from Army. Now, Andre Carter's had a very interesting draft process. He was like a very early second round, late first round guy. I think early in the draft process, he's fallen to this like late third, early fourth, even maybe early fifth conversation for some people. But again, you kind of look at the athletic tools for him. He's 6'7", 260 pounds. The Ravens just lost a 6'7" guy in Calais Campbell. Why not bring another in there in Andre Carter? So he has the length, absolutely. But I think that for him, he doesn't use leverage very well. And that dynamic athleticism sometimes isn't there. And I think counters is another area where he really needs to improve. He's very raw there. But he challenges blockers. I think there's room for growth there. Again, they don't need someone who needs to come in and have 10 sacks in a year, especially if they bring back Justin Houston. I think that with the trio of Odafe Owe, David Ajabo, Tyus Bowser, plus whatever hopeful veteran they bring in, they'd be okay if they bring in more of a developmental piece. I think Carter can be that. And those athletic tangibles, that you cannot teach those. So I think this would be a solid pick for them. Then at number 159, I'm telling, look, if the mock draft simulator gives it to you, you take it. You have to take it. Jonathan Mingo was my pick here. I couldn't pass him up. He is way too low on the Draft Network ratings for me. I don't even think he's going to be there at 86, honestly. Having him at 159, I don't know what I would do if Jonathan Mingo is still on the board at 159. I won't talk too much about him because I've talked about him a lot. 6'2", 225. I mean, he's the type of body I think the Ravens need. That's why I'm a little higher on Quentin Johnson for the Ravens, as maybe others aren't, because they don't have that type of a player. Very run after the catch guy. He's a playmaker. He's not a speedster. He's not going to separate every single play, but I think the Ravens have separators already. They have Odell Beckham Jr. They have Rashad Bateman. I think Mingo is a very complementary skill set to what the Ravens have wide receiver wise. And I think he can be, the Miles Boykin that wasn't Miles Boykin, although Boykin was a little taller than Jonathan Mingo. But regardless, I still think he'd be a really good player for them. Then finally, I ended up doubling down at wide receiver at 201. Raheem Jarrett, wide receiver from Maryland, was my selection. The homecoming story here. Raheem Jarrett, 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's electric. He's an electric player. The run after the catch ability, you get him in the open field. He can burn you. He's a very smart football player. You can line him up in a lot of places. Now, I think people are concerned about his frame and also his catch radius. He doesn't necessarily have the ability to just absolutely scoop balls out from not in his body area. But to me, I think the separation is another area where I kind of look and I don't see consistent separation. But again, I don't think you need Raheem Jarrett to come in and be an 1,000-yard wide receiver after bringing in Odell. And if you draft Jonathan Mingo, you have Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay, I'd feel confident in this pick. And it's kind of a sandwich. It's a need sandwich, this is. I took 2 corners and 2 wide receivers. And right in the middle is the edge guy. So the edge guy is kind of sandwiched in the middle. But I think this was solid. I think this would be a very good regular draft. I think I did a good job mock-wise. But I think you, again, get 2 really solid corners in the first 2 picks. You get 2 really good sleeper wide receivers with the last 2, and then a developmental edge guy who has, I think, a very high ceiling. So sign me up for this one. I'll give myself an A-. Not quite an A or an A+, but I think to me I did a pretty good job here. But coming up in our final segment, we'll turn to Twitter. We'll look at mock drafts on Twitter, the consensus of the Ravens fan base on what the Ravens should do in their 2023 draft adventure. So be sure to stay tuned. So lots to dive into on Locked On Ravens. We are back. Our final segment, Locked On Ravens, here on Monday. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you again. Thank you so much for tuning in, being here with us, making us your first listen each and every day. Be sure to subscribe here on YouTube in video form. Also follow along in audio form as well. Here in video form, we're going to be doing live streams. We're going to have 3 straight days of live streams, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, as we'll be reacting to the Ravens picks, what they end up doing on night 1, day 2, and day 3. So it's going to be 3 straight days of live streaming for me here on Locked On Ravens, plus shows. We'll have a Friday show recapping day 1. No actual shows on Saturday and Sunday, but we will be doing live streams on Friday night and Saturday, probably in the evening, depending on when the draft ends for Baltimore. So be sure to keep Locked On Ravens here, and those will be available in audio form after they're done. They'll be posted anywhere you get your podcast. So exciting. It's exciting. It's the draft here, but let's get to the consensus of the Ravens fan base here on Twitter. And, obviously for my mock draft Sundays, you can comment your mock drafts down below. For Mock Draft Monday, where I'll read them off on the show. At least I try to get to as many as I can. So if you missed out on that this year, next year, come back next year and put your mock draft down. It's really fun here. So first we'll get into one from Be More Finest, who says, I will not pass on Addison as a Raven. So pick 22, Jordan Addison, the wide receiver from USC, is the selection. At number 86, Israel Abanikanda, the running back from Pittsburgh, is a selection. Corey Trice, the corner from Purdue, is at 133. Scorian Bennett, corner from Maryland, at 157. Braden Daniels, interior offensive lineman from Utah, at 199. And Gerard Clark, defensive lineman from Coastal Carolina, at 218. And there was a trade in here at some point. I can't see what the trade was, but 6 picks in this one for the Ravens. I like Jordan Addison a lot. It seems like his stock has gone down ever since the combine / his pro day. I don't think he necessarily wowed anybody there. And I think guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba and even Zay Flowers have definitely jumped him in the rankings. Even Quentin Johnston, I think, might be taken. I know he might be a fit for a team like the Texans, but I still like Jordan Addison. I think that you could even maybe trade down and get Jordan Addison depending on how teams like him. I would not be mad at that. A running back at 86, that might be a tad early if it's not Bijan Robinson, but there are a lot of those running back prospects in this draft I think can be very, very good. And I think that's why people are saying, Why would you spend the first on Bijan Robinson when you have J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards? And there's a very, I'd say, deep class when you start getting to the 4th, 5th, 6th rounds, and even smaller school guys. So to me, I think a running back in the 3rd might be a bit early, but again, there are some talented players there. 2 corners back-to-back, I like that. Gerard Clark is one of my sleepers. I like him out of Coastal Carolina. Very good pass rusher and also graded out pretty well against the run as well. Then Braden Daniels getting some guard help for the Ravens with Ben Powers departing. So this is solid. I like Jordan Addison a lot. I think that would not be a bad first-round selection, but maybe you can even trade down for him at this point. We'll see how the board ends up falling. Then we'll get into one from Jazz legend Marcus the Worm Hicks, who says, thoughts on going O-line at the end, but like you say, take what the mock gives you. Yeah, so Joey Porter Jr., the corner from Penn State, the pick at 22. Kayshon Boutte, the wide receiver from LSU, was at 95. Roschon Johnson, the running back from Texas, at number 128. Byron Young, the Alabama defensive lineman, at 157. And Garrett Williams, the corner from Syracuse, at 172. And there was a trade here. The Ravens also get a Kansas City 2024 4th round selection. So I suit the trade back from 86 to 95, I think is what this was. So if it was that, I think that's pretty solid. Joey Porter Jr. is my realistic dream. I've had those picks the past couple of years. 2021 was Rashad Bateman. I think that worked out. And realistic dream is a player who I don't think is going to be there, but I think is much more realistic to fall than some of the top players at that position. So in Bateman's year, Jamar Chase was never falling to Baltimore. Devonta Smith was never falling. Jalen Waddle was never falling. Bateman was expected to go in the 20, 21, 22 range. He fell to them in the late 20s. I forget who it was last year, but I think they were close to getting, I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll have to go back and find out who it was. But 2023 is Joey Porter Jr. I don't expect him to be there. Honestly, I think he probably goes to Pittsburgh. That's the most likely landing spot, but I would be ecstatic if the Ravens got Joey Porter Jr. at 22. I'm higher on Kayshon Boutte than others. I would take a swing on his potential personally. I know there are some issues in terms of just where he projects at the NFL level after, an incredible freshman year, but then just kind of fallen off the face of the earth over the past couple of seasons for multiple different reasons, injuries, quarterback play, lack of production, etc. But I actually would not be mad at Kayshon Boutte at this pick. I like those top 2 picks there. Then Roschon Johnson, I think a very solid running back, getting defensive line depth. Garrett Williams, he is a 2nd round guy, 3rd round guy in my opinion. 172, it's good value. It's really good value. Then a Kansas City 2024 4th. And, you could go offensive line at the end. I mean, Garrett Williams is a much better pick than an offensive lineman in this situation, especially because I think they're going to sign a couple of guards, undrafted guys. So I like this one a lot. I give this one an A. It's 5 picks to pick up an extra pick for the Ravens in 2024. You address needs here. This one's an A from me, 100%. Let's do one from Odell Era 3, who said, I didn't make any trades, but I think I got some good value. Thoughts? 22. Johnny Langan, the tight end from Rutgers at 22. Marquise Stepp, the running back from Western Kentucky, 86. Jalen Hall, the wide receiver from Western Kentucky at 124. Bumper Pools, linebacker from Arkansas at 157. And Noah Ruggles, the kicker from Ohio State at 199. What is this? What is this? This is obviously a troll mock draft, but I want to read it. Bumper Pool might be the best name in this draft, honestly. I did not know there was a player named Bumper Pool in this. So you learn something new every day. So shout out for that. But yeah, I gave an A on the last one. I'm going to have to give this one an F, unfortunately. But you can't win them all. And I appreciate the Bumper Pool shout out. I'll have to keep an eye on where he goes. Finally, let's do one here from Aaron, who has the Ravens trading down, taking Josh Downs, a wide receiver from North Carolina, at number 48. DJ Turner, cornerback from Michigan, at 55. Jordan Battle, safety from Alabama, at 86. Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver from Ole Miss, at 124. And Deuce Vaughn, running back from Kansas State, at 199. Plus picking up a 2024 Detroit second in that. So I like this. This is kind of like what I did last week, where I think unless the trade was different, I can't actually read what the trade was, but I think this was trading 22 for 48, 55, and a 2024 second, which I would be totally okay with, especially if you could get the haul of Josh Downs and DJ Turner. I think I got Josh Downs and who did I get? I can't even remember who I got. Josh Downs and someone. It was a corner. But I think, for getting that, it's 3 seconds essentially. But again, this is a draft to me where there are going to be these guys who, you get to 48, you get to 55, and you're thinking, why are they still on the board? They should be gone by now. that's just the way that this is going to be, where I feel like there are going to be prospects from the middle of the first round to the middle or the end of the third round, from the middle of day one to the end of day two, where you could make an argument for this guy could have been a first rounder, but he's available in the second. This guy could have been a second rounder, but he's available in the third. So to me, the trade down situation would not be bad whatsoever. I like Josh Downs a lot as a prospect. I think he's a second round guy. I think he'll go early second round. Could sneak into the end of the first round depending on the wide receiver run if the quote unquote top four guys are gone. I like BJ Turner a lot. Jordan Battle gives them some more secondary depth as well. Jonathan Mingo, 124. That's good value too. I don't think he's going to be there, but you take what the mock draft simulator gives you. A running back at the end here, and then the Detroit second in 2024. I think going to be very, very valuable. So I like this one a lot from Aaron here. Solid A from me on this one. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in here today. Again, be sure to subscribe, like this video on YouTube, follow along in audio form, recommend the show to a friend. Word of mouth is still a thing, by the way. I know it's kind of outdated with the social media age, but you can spread the word to your friends and family. I greatly appreciate all the support. You're going to get back here tomorrow. More Ravens talk, more draft content as the draft quickly approaches for the Ravens. So be sure to stay tuned for that. I'll see you right back here tomorrow.